So quick reminder, we're trying to make these, put these up on YouTube Unfiltered, available to the general public per request. I think I don't remember who requested that, but it's part of our values is transparency. So just don't mention candidate names if they haven't started yet, and don't mention customer names. And there may be something else we discussed we don't want to make public, but it's unlikely other than those two things. So we'll just decide at the end if we can make this one public. So that being said, Sam or Samuel, do you go by Sam or Sam? You want to introduce yourself?
Sam's fine, although I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to deconflict the two Sams. I might have to go by Samuel just for that sake, the sake of ease of knowing who's who. Yeah, so I just started yesterday. I came from ForcePoint. I was there for just over 4 years on their insider threat product. Super excited to be here. As you can tell, I'm finishing out my office space. I have a 6-month-old who just got booted out of our room, which means he booted me out of my office upstairs. So this is a work in progress. I guess you'll get to see how it goes over time. I'm hoping to move pretty fast on it, though.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Could you tell us which category are you going to focus on, if you already know?
Oh, yes, sorry. I should have mentioned that. I'm going to be taking over in Defend the areas that Sam Kerr is working right now. So web application firewall, threat protection, I think was the other one, in container network security.
Those are the best.
And RASP as well.
And which one as well?
RASP as well.
RASP as well. Cool. Sam, just as you see a lot of faces here, except for Sam Kerr and Thomas and Philippe, I think almost, and Lucas. Everybody else has started in the last 3 to 4 months, some less so. So large portion of the team is almost as new at the company as you are.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you guys. I'll be setting up some coffee chats as soon as I can with several of you.
Cool. And you're in Mountain Time Zone, is that right?
Correct. Yep, I'm in Utah.
Utah. Neat. So the team ranges, by the way, all the way from New Zealand to Hawaii to all 4 time zones in North America to folks on interim on loan to the team. Well, actually, just net England, Germany, Switzerland, and Poland. Some of whom are not started yet. Some of whom are on loan on some of those countries, but pretty wide swath. I still have to get used to Arthur and that he is a day ahead of me. So we'll see updates on Sunday night, my time, for his Monday, which always throws me, but always entertains me too. I'm sure you see that you notice the reverse, Arthur, that everybody else seems to be a day behind you.
Yeah, it's good to be in the future.
Cool. So I have the couple of the first items. So we're looking for volunteers to be interviewers for the team. So far it's me, Thomas, Philippe, and Lindsay, and also Matt in product management. Not everybody interviewing every candidate, of course. So there's we want more folks helping us to decide who we want to hire. So there's 2 ways to help with interviews. One is to be a technical interviewer, which actually then you get to interview people across the company on all teams. There's a whole process for that. And although people want to do that, Lucas put in the link there on how to do that. It is really useful. People seem to learn a lot. It is a big time commitment, just not big. It's a moderate to big time commitment, so be aware of that. And what I was looking for as well is folks help with behavioral interviews. So, talking about, asking STAR method questions, situation, task, action, results, and looking for culture fit, and do they understand Agile and things like that. So looks like Lucas has already volunteered, and actually he's already gone through the training for it, which is great. So if others want to volunteer and help, the more we have, the more we can spread that across multiple people as well. So if others are interested, and again, thanks, Lucas, if others are interested, just ping me and I will tell you what you need to do. And if you're interested in either side. of the technical interviews or the behavioral interviews. So that being said, so next item, and I didn't put all the detail in here, of course, but we were really close on the MVC for network policy. Really, really close. And I am really proud of the team. You know, most folks working on it are brand new to the team, both in product management and in engineering. We were so close in getting in the cut for the previous release, but we didn't. And there's all sorts of reasons why. And, you know, we've got good lessons learned, so we can work to avoid address those in the future. And one of the ones was, so there's many different reasons. One of the ones was that, in particular, that it isn't clear on this one, what, as clear as it could be, what is minimal for the MVC, for network policies. So the team, I'm going to paraphrase in some ways, the team was a little bit, some of the engineers were surprised, like, is this thing in or not? It's not clear from the issue. And we were running to try to get it in all at the last minute, and people worked really hard to make that happen. But I guess, Matt, can you do another pass with Arthur, Zamir, Philippe, and Thomas on this? And I guess actually include Sam as well. Because we really want to make sure we understand what's minimal from a product management perspective. And I think we're close to being on the same page as a group, but not 100%. Like one example is being able to log but not block part of the MVC. That was one of them. I think there were others as well. But I guess in terms of kind of the ask, does that Thomas and Arthur and Zamir, did I kind of summarize the engineering perspective on it? And then I definitely want to hear from Matt as well. But is that a good summary of kind of our concerns on what is minimal?
I'm going to live dangerously and add a little bit of content or context, I guess. There is a distinction between an MVC and reaching minimal from a feature category maturity standpoint. The direction that I have seen us take as an organization to differentiate those is through epics, where there's an epic defining the number of the issues or child epics necessary for a feature category to get to minimal, then to get to complete, then to get to viable, and then to get to mature or lovable. So if we're looking at what the definition is as far as the issues that are included or considered to be part of getting to minimal, the epic is the place to look. So that link is now available within the
that's good. Not the MVC issue.
Yeah, the MVC issue, yeah, it's just the initial minimum viable change, but there may be additional work above and beyond that one issue in order to get to maturity level.
One in particular, this is great, Thomas. So for network security, for me, we want to make sure we know everything that the product management agrees that helps us puts us together, and we work together on it and make sure that we have agreement on what is minimal for each one. And epics broken down into issues, I think would be great. So because we thought we were in sync, and we weren't on at least a handful of things. So this will help with that. Other folks' thoughts?
Yeah, I think in hindsight on this one, it is something that could have been split out, because it is an MVC is kind of the title of the issue, and it talks about several different parts of the change. I guess I would ask, rather than having me go back and look through for things that are unclear, I don't know what is unclear, and it sounds like there were potentially conversations that happened outside. So if there are things that need to be defined, let's track that in the issue through comments and tag me. I think that we actually covered a lot of this ground. The only thing, and this was a change from a few weeks ago when we were trying to get a little bit more clarity around this, was the traffic. Originally, the idea was logging, Cilium effect kind of influenced what we were going to do with the logging, because it couldn't do just traffic log only. It could only log the drop traffic. So that's definitely one to call out.
Yeah,
But
I think that was the primary one. None other jump out at me, but I don't know, Zamir or Arthur or Thomas or anybody else. Were there any other ones where we were thinking one thing and maybe Matt was thinking something else? Was that the primary one?
For me, I remember yesterday or day before, I saw a couple of people having different expectations on the MVC. And then I decided to give a full read on the MVC. And after giving a full read from the description to all the comments, there was like 2 or 3 points that you might have ambiguous interpretation on that. Maybe it's me because I'm new. I don't know like what has priority over what, but that's the feeling I got. And as people were having different expectations, I think that some other people might also be mixing up expectations on that.
Excellent. It's great, great insight and analysis on that. So maybe at least Zamir and Matt, you guys get together and kind of walk, not here, but offline, get together, asynchronously or synchronously if you prefer, since it's just the two of you, at least to start is kind of go over those items to make sure we're on the same page. Sound reasonable?
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So metrics tracking. So we track in various different engineering teams, a number of different metrics is number of MRs done by team, by month, and number of engineers we have. And we also look at time to merge. And I pulled that into, with some help from Lucas, a separate page just for us, which just has those 3 graphs, which you see a link there. And I want to make sure the data, the queries are correct, which I got edit rights recently, and I've been messing with those. Basically, it has the right folks on the team, and that so I want to make sure it has the right people listed. I want to make sure it has the right bringing in MRs with the appropriate tags, and then we're using the appropriate tags. So we want to quote unquote get credit for the work that we're doing in overall metric tracking. So there's been lots of discussion on this. I think net, it's that there's kind of 2 different areas. One is, looking at the notes, one is are people using the right, are people been asked to, or are they aware of, and if so, are they using the right labels on their MRs? And I think basically, if you use group threat management or group : runtime application security, when you do a change, no matter what code base, we're doing also changes in different stages to further the goals of Defend, but sometimes it's not in our own direct code base, it's in other code bases, other parts of the product. But as long as you put one of those 2 groups in the labels, then it'll show up in the metrics for our team. Is that?
We currently have 3 right now, Wayne. There's the application infrastructure security, threat management, and runtime application security.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you could add that, if that's
It's already in the doc, yeah.
Yeah, great, thanks. As long as you use one of those 3, it should show up in our metrics. Is that accurate? I think so, but folks more familiar with the labels and how Periscope pulls the data, et cetera, would love to hear if that's accurate.
Mostly. So what we're talking about are KPIs, and we're also talking about a number of other things. There is a page for development KPIs that are broken down by group, by stage, and by group for those that are interested. I invite you to Google it now. If you have questions, I'm happy to provide the link in Slack if necessary. There is a distinction between the DevOps. Oh my word. Okay, come on.
DevOps Defend label and the group
the scoped label, DevOps Defend label, and there's also group scoped labels. Those are separate and distinct. So as we were talking about in the SDefend channel yesterday, the DevOps scoped label talks about which group to which this issues to which this issue belongs, or excuse me, which stage to which this issue belongs as a part of a roadmap. Yes, and I see the finger of shame was being wagged at me briefly. The group label indicates the group that actually executed the work. The idea being is that there will be instances where we, as the groups within Defend, are going to need to pull in work in other stages roadmaps, like configure or monitor, in order to realize our own product maturity goals or to have them as prerequisites for features that we're trying to track. So so we need the group labels in order for the group to get credit for the activities on which they are undertaking. The DevOps label comes into play, DevOps Defend label comes into play for the stage to get credit as for progress against its roadmap. And so it is a bit confusing to have those two concepts separate and yet distinct, but they are important things to keep in mind as we're working technically within a monolithic architecture with some fractured components.
So for our changes that we're making, so what tag should people use?
If you're both. So in other words, in general, mirror all of
Defend and one of the group labels, both.
Best practices is to use the copy metadata quick action on the merge request itself, especially if you have referenced the issue within the merge request description. That will copy the labels and the milestone from the issue into the merge request. And that way you're always in sync. The one that you do not need, and if it is pulled over, needs to be removed, is the workflow scoped label. Those have no meaning and only add clutter on a merge request.
Okay. So net, do what Thomas said. And I'll add to that is double check your MRs. If everybody could double check their MRs that they've done over the last, let's maybe scope it to 2 or 3 months. Anything earlier than that, don't bother. Make sure it has the right labels, and that'll allow us to, quote unquote, get credit for the work, and so we'll have accurate statistics. Is that a reasonable request? Okay, seeing some thumbs up, and it's not that people haven't been doing what they've been asked to do. Is we're figuring this out as we go, as the team is very, very new. So if people could do that over the next couple days, by the end of the week, that would be awesome. Secondarily, we do not, we did a number of changes to the Cilium code base, which is awesome. We're contributing back to a different open source project. It got us what we need. Product management had full buy-in on it, et cetera. The only nitpick on just how we track our statistics, and this is, we don't quote unquote get credit for it. Now, I don't really care that much. Right? We're not going to be maintaining Cilium a lot over time. So it's a handful of MRs. That being said, if it's a small amount of work to make it so we quote unquote get credit for that work, that would be great. If it's more than a small amount of work, we don't need to do it, or I wouldn't recommend we do it. One idea was, if we choose to do is we copy the changes that we made from the Cilium code that we made to the Cilium code base into ours, really kind of to have a backup of them, check it into our code base. It'd be orphan code, right? It wouldn't be directly used, but we'd have a copy of it, and then it would also count as work, work that we've done, because we'd merge it. We'd merge it into something that's not used. But I am firmly on the fence of whether it's worth doing that. But I'd like the team's thoughts.
To sort of vocalize my comment here, I think that I thought that MR that we made was part of the work to address this, namely, if all we have to do is we need an MR that has the appropriate labels, then if we have a page that has a list of like external contributions, and we have every MR for adding an external contribution as a separate line item, then that's essentially tracking the same velocity using just documentation.
Maybe not even copying the code, just a link to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better rather than duplicating data. That seems like a reasonable set of trade-offs there. What do other people think?
The only thing is, I'm not really sure where this would live, because I'm pretty sure that contributions to the GitLab.com group, aka like the handbook, would not count towards those stats. I think it's just on GitLab.org. So I'm not sure we can actually do it with the handbook. We might have to put it somewhere else.
Yeah, it doesn't count. The MR stuff doesn't count the handbook. So as far as I know, at least if it did, we'd see a lot more because I make a whole bunch of small little changes to the handbook, and they didn't show up in those stats. So, so sounds reasonable to me. What do other folks think?
I think Philip suggested this approach before, and I think most people agreed with that. I don't remember which meeting was that.
So just
and I think that,
then, perhaps then.
Yeah, I think the question was the same: was where to put this page, if this information.
That was discussed on Monday during the group discussion. Yes.
Yeah. So somebody want to take? Sounds like the team is in favor of doing this. Have a page, but in our code that has the link to other to outside contributions that we've made, outgoing. Who wants to volunteer for that?
So just to sum up what we discussed on Monday, the idea was to have something in the handbook actually, because there's no way for us to track anything in GitLab itself.
Yeah, but if it's in the handbook, it doesn't show up in the statistics.
How do we do that anyway? In the statistics?
Yeah, I think we just create it in our code base a static, or a markup page that is just, documentation that is just in the code.
So when it says statistics, you're talking about Periscope?
Yes. When I say, so it'd be like an .md file in our code base where we just keep a list of our outside contributions.
And we don't, if all we care about is merge requests, we don't care if this is in like the GitLab code base itself. We could just make it as part of the defend general repo or something. Just add things to a README file.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable. Lucas, it sounds like you've got in your head what you think we need. Do you want to volunteer to create that page? Thanks. Okay. Philippe, did we cover your comment? Did we cover Philippe and Lucas? Did we cover all your thoughts on this?
Exactly. Thanks.
Lucas as well? Sorry, I looked away from the screen. Excellent. Okay, cool. Thomas, changes to our product development flow process.
Okay, so there's been a number of conversations that have been happening. They're not just here in Defend. This is all over the place, where we're having challenges in the handoff between product management and engineering. So there's an experiment we want to try. You'll note for those that have been paying attention to the Defend stage calendar, there's a new entry on the books for Thursday afternoon if you're on the US East Coast. So what we want to try for those that have been here for a little bit, so basically engineers that are on this call, congratulations, we'd like to invite you to a meeting, agenda to come. What we want to do is start taking a look at issues that are earlier within the workflow that has been defined by the company, and start breaking these large issues that we are chasing apart, hopefully into their architectural boundaries, so that we can start working on issues that are smaller, and therefore we can become more predictable in what we're trying to deliver. We're trying to push this, so we're trying to take what we're doing for grooming, break it apart, identify where our boundaries are, and then we have smaller implementation issues that we can therefore groom, schedule, and start iterating upon. So there is so that's me speaking to what is in the agenda and given a little bit of a harmony to what's been listed here. So there's some candidate issues we want to start looking through. These are not in priority order deliberately. These are more along the lines of things that we know that are be big, that are on a relative near-term roadmap and could use some attention from us right now. So these are some things these are some issues we want to experiment with. My request of engineers is to please start looking through these issues and start trying to understand if it's complete enough for us to understand what is being asked of us.
With a caveat, some of the ones on this list are not, in my discussions with product management, are not priorities for us right now. So I think some of these definitely are. But if it's network policy related or WAF related or first class vulnerability related, then yes. To summarize, it's a very, very likely yes. But the IDS rules and serverless use cases are not on our priorities yet. And we've got other things that I'm worried about spreading ourselves too thin across too many different things. Is my understanding of the priorities are first class vulnerability objects, WAF, network policies, and then UEBA, which we haven't even started really thinking about yet. So I want to make sure we're focused on.
To add to that, for the list of issues here, I think we should not focus on ones that are in the backlog. Because like looking at that first one, I made that about 2 months ago, and it's just the template in the backlog. I don't think that's going to be a productive discussion to try and dig into that one yet, since we haven't done full problem definition requirements from our product side yet. So I think we should just focus on active milestones.
So I think that this is part of the point. If you look at the custom IDS rules here, this one is scheduled for 12.9 right now. And it has no description. So I think a big problem with this is that we need to go through this, and we need to break down what are currently scheduled for upcoming milestones.
And not in 12.8. We're looking beyond 12.8 deliberately, so that we can start getting ahead of this from a planning perspective.
I'm not convinced we've got all the right things we need for 12.8 yet. Either. I know. So I'm getting my version numbers right for the version for next month, which, yeah, for 12.8, I would actually like us to start with 12.8, which I think will help us make sure we're on the right page for what we're planning to do 12.8, and then look at 12.9 and beyond. And 12.8 specifically, first class, perhaps we do this is we focus on 12.8 and the three things we've got in flight right now: first class vulnerability objects, WAF, and network policies. And make sure we're in good shape on those, and then expand past that. Because we definitely don't want to just work on, just 1 month, plan out 1 month's worth of stuff, but we have to get the next month right before we work on future months. And the reason why I say is for network policies, we had some misunderstandings between people on what is minimal or not. And some of these are, I think those three are all in at least okay shape. Some of them may be a lot better than okay shape, but there are some discrepancies and misunderstandings. And we were trying to get three things to minimal. That was at least our initial guess in fourth quarter, and we're going to get 0. So, and our OKR for this next quarter is to get 3 to minimal. And that includes first class vulnerability objects and network policies. And, we've got all sorts of good reasons why. In the retrospective and in the group discussion, we documented those, and we got some good feedback on both sets of information. But can we start with 12.8 and those three priorities first, and then move on to 12.9 and beyond? Or is that a horrible idea? If that's a horrible idea, tell me.
I don't think anyone wants to advocate for being off track for 12.8. I think there's value to revisiting the issues that are already slated for 12.8, but I think what Thomas was proposing is more of a adjustment to how we deal with planning and doing that sooner in the process. Yeah. So not maybe ignoring the need. Yeah, exactly. Review not ignoring the need to ensure that we're building the right thing for 12.8. Let's start this process for 12.9 going forward in a controlled manner.
Sorry, Lindsay. So not one or the other, but both. We do it. We review what is in the plan for 12.8, make sure it's the right things, and then also we start on 12.9 as well, because we're not planning to start that, or well, we want to plan that out for the month after. But we reconfirm 12.8, and then we immediately then start on 12.9, or maybe work on them in parallel.
And I think for the 12.8 conversations, there's already a better idea of who's working on what pieces, so that can be a more targeted conversation. Whereas if we're looking towards planning for 12.9, we're talking about sort of a larger group, better cross knowledge sharing, not just the individuals who are already sort of pre-assigned to that work.
I like that way of approaching it. What do other folks think?
Yeah, to say it a different way, I think what we're looking for is to take the feedback loop of when there are things that may not be clear. So I think to the point of what's going on right now with the network policy stuff, were we to have sort of ironed all those kinks out 1 or 2 releases in terms of from a planning perspective ahead of time, we would have been in a little bit better spot on some of the clarity, maybe even the size, having split a few things out into smaller chunks for the particular release. So this is just kind of taking the existing process a little bit further and doing something synchronous proactively ahead of time, and not at the expense of 12.8.
So I think the problem with 12.8 is that 12.8 begins tomorrow. Like we're almost past the point where we should be planning for 12.8, and at that point we're going to be actively changing the priorities for 12.8 during 12.8. So that's why we were originally targeting 12.9, is because it seems a bit late on in terms of targeting the next milestone, because 12.8 is basically the current milestone.
Right. I am concerned because we didn't do that planning that we may work on the wrong things or in the wrong priority order. We might be doing things in 12.8 that we'd rather do in another release, in a later release, or we might not be pulling some of the right things in, et cetera.
Yeah,
I don't think we're in bad shape. Far from it. I think we're in good shape. I think it would help us to get in better shape for 12.8.
And as the team gets bigger, this problem will get bigger. And the more people that we have building more things, the more pain we'll suffer from not having these types of improvements in our planning.
Yep. So it sounds like, well, any other comments on it? It sounds like, we're over on time, of course, but any other comments on this? I think we need to continue the conversation shortly.
Wayne, I'm hearing you advocate that this is a conversation as far as looking prior to ahead of 12.8 is you're against it, and you want focus on 12.8, and you want visibility into what the plan is and what is committed first.
Well, I think sort of, mostly. Some want to do this for 12.9. Some want to do this for 12.8, and it's not an either or. I think it's both. Revisit what we're planning to do for 12.8 just to make sure it's the right things, and then also plan out 12.9 before we start working on 12.9.
The point of what I was trying to articulate, I'm going to try one more time. And if this is, and then I will cede the floor and the point if it doesn't work. If this is still not, if this is still not agreeable. The point of this is not to try to plan out 12.9 in 2 days. The point of this was to get feedback early as to what issues are candidates for future releases, starting with 12.9 and beyond. What might be too big? How might we get to smaller iterations within these individual issues? So the idea here was to get that feedback as early as we could, so that everything could be gotten into shape, so that we could adequately capacity plan for 12.9 and beyond. Right now, the biggest problem that we have is that there is no such thing as a small issue within this stage. We're trying to get to that point, and this was the first step towards it. However, if it is a higher priority for visibility into what is being committed in 12.8, then we can hold this particular conversation for looking ahead of it and focus in and get everyone comfortable with what's going on in the iteration that we're starting now.
On 12.8, it's visibility and confirming it's the right stuff based on product management priorities. If we do that for 12.8, to reconfirm, to review with product management what we're planning for 12.8 and make sure it's the right things from their perspective, how much would it delay us from getting started on planning out 12.9?
At least a week.
I feel like that's a week. That week delay would be unfortunate, but for 12.9, but would be really beneficial to 12.8. So I suggest we do 12.8, do a reconfirmation on what's going into 12.8, make sure Matt and Sam, as he returns, are good with it, and then maybe a light review of it, not a detailed review, and then we go into exactly what you described for 12.9, and not delay the 12.9 discussions for more than a week. Does that seem like a reasonable compromising way to go?
In terms of what's there now, I mean, this should be a force ranked list, with things at the top being higher priority, things at the bottom being lower priority. I'm happy to re-review that with Sam and Derek on the WAF stuff, and I'm sure Matt would be as well, just to give it's in the correct order or not.
For 12.8 and 12.9, or just 12.8?
Definitely 12.8, and we need to get there for 12.9 and the subsequent releases as well, so we can start doing this longer term planning like we're talking about.
That'd be great.
I've removed the meeting from the calendar. We'll regroup.
I don't want to delay it too much because it's very, very valuable. So maybe rather than removing it, well, you already removed it, is rescheduled for next week rather than this week?
See where we get with 12.8 first.
Okay. I definitely don't want to delay 12.9 too much. Because we have two important goals. Any other comments on this before we go off to the last item? Lindsay, you got the floor.
All right, everybody, now we're all going to sing to Daniel. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday,
Don't
Daniel.
make me sing by myself in this call. Okay, happy birthday, Daniel. You lucky
Thank
guy
you, thank
who
you.
happened to be scheduled on the same day as this call, everyone. And welcome, Sam, and welcome back, Sam.
Thank you.
And now I'm blushing, so we can go.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, and
Just-
go ahead.
Well, yeah. Since we are over time already, I will take the equation to say that we finally found the root cause of the WAF issue. I didn't want to add that to the agenda because it was pretty packed already. But yeah, congrats to Lucas and the infrastructure team.
Woo!
That was a 3 weeks fight, but we narrowed down the root cause to the logging system of mod security. We don't have a clear solution yet, but at least we know where to look for. So making great progress there. Finally, we can move on. All right, with this good news, have a good rest of your day.
Sounds good. Thanks, folks.
See you.